कौन सा पसंद है आपको?
National terrorism, as we call the global terrorism, it has got very serious effects on the society, affecting the rule of law, affecting our basic rights. It has adverse effect on the undermine our pluralistic civil society even, aims at destruction of the democratic basis of the society. So it has got extensive ramification in the society, this terrorism. But at the same time, how we shall meet this terrorism? So the global terrorism, counter-terrorism activities. We are very much worried about the counter-terrorism activities. In the name of meeting the terrorism, the great values of human rights also is seriously eroded. There is one problem which we are now the world at large is facing. And powerful countries, powerful nations, they will say we are only meeting the terrorism, but in the name of that, violations of basic rights, they are not. Those who are affected by or those who are suspected to have committed terrorism, they are detained for long period. Both suspects and allegedly suspects, people are incarcerated in jails for longer period. They are very, very coercive. Interrogation is there. Various types of torture is inflicted on them. All these, to a great extent, could be avoided. At the same time, meet the terrorism to find out solution for the terrorism. So this is something which we see in many other countries. They don't reveal the number of persons detained. They don't reveal the nature of the violation of basic rights. Even in some other countries, this telephone tapping and all great inroad into the privacy of your life, all being done very clandestinely. They are given all these permission is given to all secret agents, and nobody knows what is happening in those countries. India is luckily, we are in a very good situation. Of course, there may be some violations of basic rights in India also. Important subject which people would like to know about this subject, how to we have to find out some solution to at least a mode by which the least problems are caused to the great values of human rights. The human rights is to be protected and preserved. They are inalienable rights which one has to enjoy, basic freedoms which is human rights. So our time is limited, so I hope the speakers will come straight to the point and talk on the subject, taking the minimum time required, so that we can have a very good discussion on this subject.
My fellow speakers, of course, Professor Shetty will come later on, Sir James will come later on, Mr. Wasim Numani will be joining us shortly. I have two more fellow speakers on the dais, Mr. Jeremy Payne, Mr. Harpreet Singh. Honorable participants in this conference, ladies and gentlemen, I think I am speaking on this subject quite often. I remember speaking earlier here in this very committee room and also at London where Dr. Balakrishnan was chairing the conference. And I feel this is an appropriate topic, a contemporary topic for all the human race, not only Indians, but the human race, to discuss, to debate on the menace of present-day terrorism and to look out solutions, and as many of us are advocates, to look out for legal framework as to how we have to contain, control, and eliminate terrorism through legal system. But at the moment, America is adhering to modes of some sort of terrorism by taking the detainees away from their legal jurisdiction, taking their detainees of prisoners of war far away beyond the legal jurisdiction of their nation or their state of Goa. And happy to inform you, just 2 days back, when I was in Delhi, I received a message on my mobile that a small state of Goa also started a state human rights commission. So that was to show that our country is a country which adheres. The paper here, I think it will be most appropriate for me because it is a very complex. The nation was formed in 1845. It took 3 years for the delegates, the national delegates, to the United Nations to life. Whether the state gives us a guarantee for the safety of life, I think this is also debated in the legal fraternity. In the contemporary world, communities facing imbalance in development in a biased, unipolar world, certain segments still trying hard to gain economic freedom due to rampant hunger and poverty. If we scan the globe for the last 62 years, for the example of genocide, repression, torture, wars and rape, starvation, death, environmental degradation, and terrorism, the answer will be follow us. It's high time the nations of the world come together and ponder whether the world body has greater proactive role to play in fighting terrorism in its all forms. It is not high time that the world body act fast and see laws are framed and forced to establish on the pattern of the war tribunal with international jurisdiction? If not, this world will face its doomsday at the end and at the altar of terrorism. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so happy for having your time and your patience. And I thank the chair for giving me extra time. Thank you very much.
International law and domestic law have to face the very serious challenge of balancing between national security interests in the face of terror and the important value of protecting human rights of suspected terrorists. International jurisprudence has shown in the beginning of this century, after 9/11 attacks, complete acceptance of executive and legislative emergency measures against terror. However, in later years, courts showed a very strict approach toward executive and legislative counter-terrorism measures. The dilemma of shaping a proper attitude toward people of different cultures and religions has been made greater by this challenge because of the security threats and terror violence of attacks that were committed by international terrorist groups. In recent years, a dialogue is taking place between the legislature and the courts on the legislative measures which were introduced to fight the terror organization all over the world, particularly after the 9/11 attack. In this context, the courts had to deal with judicial review of security decisions such as the detention of unlawful combatants, administrative detentions, target killing, special investigative procedures and the like. The general pattern in most jurisdictions has been to broaden the scope of judicial review of executive decisions in matters of national security, while in the past the scope was narrower, limited to procedural deficiencies or jurisdictional deficiencies. Today, in recent years, the judicial approach has changed and courts do not hesitate to review executive and legislative decisions in national security matters. This is noteworthy that in spite of the increase in terror attacks in recent years, the courts demonstrated readiness to review administrative discretion in security matters. In the last decades, numerous countries were subjected to terror activities. In addition to the 9/11 attacks in the United States, attacks were directed at train stations in London 2005, in Madrid 2004. In Asia, attacks took place in Bali, and of course we are sitting here in New Delhi, and India was subjected to terror attacks, actually last week in Bransi, and of course we all remember the vicious attack perpetrated against Mumbai, including the Taj Mahal Hotel. In the first part of the last decade, immediately after the 9/11 attacks, as I mentioned during the plenary session, the courts were impacted by the grave results of the attacks, and legislature enacted emergency measures, and the executive very much exercised these powers, and the courts were in fact demonstrating deterrence. In the second part, we can see that there is less acceptance and less deference to these measures. Let me just review very quickly, within the limit of time, a number of cases which I already mentioned, but I will give you more details this time. In the United States, the government policy was very active after the horrific terrorist attack after 9/11. And first, the Patriot Act of 2006, Military Commissions Act, which allowed much more invasive and abusive policies against human rights. In the 2006 Military Commissions Act, has revoked the right to challenge the confinement in court for a select group who had been designated illegal enemy combatants without being able to recourse to judicial process. In the United States, in response to the terrorist attacks, at the beginning it was based on an executive order. The legal proceedings were based on executive orders. The court said, no, you have to legislate congressional legislation, so the Congress legislated the law. However, we see in a number of cases like Hamdi versus Rumsfeld and the Hamdan case, and finally the case of Boumediene. The case of Boumediene decided that people that are detained in Guantanamo Bay are entitled to judicial review in the United States. So this was a total change of the judicial policy. In Canada, the Supreme Court of Canada struck down an anti-terror law which allowed detaining foreign suspects indefinitely without trial or filing charges on the basis of secret evidence, while orders to deport them were reviewed. This is the case of Charkawi versus Canada Citizenship and Immigration. This was a case from 2007. In later years, it is to be mentioned that the case of Khader, where a minor of Canadian citizenship was arrested in Afghanistan and held in Guantanamo, the court decided to quash any admission, any confession that he made, because it was under torture. In the United Kingdom, I would like to mention that the administrative matter was discussed clearly in the UK, the question of detention, and others against Secretary of State of Home Department regarding the detention under Anti-Terrorism Act, Crime Security Act of 2001 of foreign nationals who had been certified by the Secretary of State as suspected international terrorists and who could not be deported without breaching Article 3. They were denied without charge or trial in accordance with the derogation from Article 5.1 provided by the Human Rights Act of 1998. And this is one case. And the other case which the court intervened was Binyam Muhammad, where the court ordered disclosure of evidence that was given by the U.S. intelligence to the British Security Service. So in this case, the court did not accept the position of the Secretary of